Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Ghost Light. In this podcast, we get into it with industry professionals and artists who are building sustainable life in the arts. And today I'm joined by my good friend, Constance Swain.
What
Constance,
up?
so great to have you.
I'm so glad to be back. It's always a pleasure. I'm honored. Thank you.
The pleasure is all mine. Great to have you. So today, Constance, I thought we would get into a little bit of artists and artist identity, because I know that you had a recent shift, not necessarily of profession, but of entrepreneurial expansion. So,
hmm
can you tell us a little bit about what changed for you in the last year?
Yeah, and I love that you said entrepreneurial expansion because that's how I've been describing it. It's because I feel like so many of us are of the mindset that if you're not in the lane and you sort of pivot or deviate anywhere from what that lane is, and it's like, oh, you've given up. You don't do this anymore. And it's like, man, that's such BS. Nah, I've expanded into real estate, which is something that I've always been interested in, and it's an ever evolving industry, just like our industry. It's like you look up and one day does not match the next, which is also exciting. So yeah, I've expanded into real estate.
Tell me about the point where you decided I'm going to do this. What was going on in your life when you decided you were going to start? Because it's not an easy thing to get into real estate, right?
No, no. I feel like it's one of those things that a lot of us might because we have some idea about what it is. Look, we know like, oh, what they do or I have an idea. So, but getting into it, no, it's a journey. It definitely is. And it was something that honestly I had to sit and pray and meditate on heavy. It did not I did not stumble into this decision by any stretch of the imagination. It was, I would say, it was at the back of my mind for, like, the better part of 2 years, and then within, I would say, like, all of 2025, it was just knocking, like, "Hey, remember me? Remember me?" And I was like, "Oh, man. No, 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 no." But then as a little more time went on, so what was happening in my career, is the ever evolving and revolving door of AI, and where I was starting to not necessarily feel like jobs weren't out there for specifically voiceover, which is where I was really putting a lot of my attention into. I mean, I was doing directing as well and have had the pleasure of directing many a thing, which is awesome. But for my bread and butter, and also the thing that I was sort of my like for real creative outlet was voiceover, and is voiceover still. But I was finding, like, I would say back in 2020, I remember seeing, like, maybe for every 30 auditions, you'd have, like, one that was this little, like, TTS, like, text to speech, which was a kind of a hint at something like, AI training of some sort. And I remember being like, "What's that?" And I would see it, and I would see the payout, and I was like, "What is this?" And I'd look into it, and I was like, "Oh, no, no, no." But now, oh my goodness, it is if it isn't something that is AI training. It is a product that is talking about AI, whether it's for any of these companies, a lot of like cellular companies or whatever, they're all introducing AI. And I'm not knocking it by any means, but it's just it had become sort of like all consuming. And I was like, man, okay. And I was just starting to feel a little bit of a shift in just what I was getting exposed to from the audition side. And after some prayer and getting married, that was a big sort of like change in my journey too, or expansion in the journey. I was like, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to just like dip my toe in this water. And I could do it privately. It wasn't something I didn't even tell Jack. I didn't even tell my partner about it. It was just something that I would like go secretly and watch a YouTube video about. What is it to be a realtor? What does that even mean? And so then that just grew and it grew. And then I decided to really take that dive after we got married. I like locked in and did all of my training and took the test, and here we are.
Yeah. So when did it become official?
It became official. I passed my test November 12th. Which, by the way, for anyone who might be interested in studying, you might want to plug your ears because I did not want to know this. I'm glad I didn't know it going in, but I did all like it was 60 hours of classes that I could take at my own pace. And then at the end of that 60 hours, which was all this virtual program, I had to take like a final test and to then be able to take my final test for the program itself, where it was a proctor who was on there and was watching me as I took this test, and I had to like show the room I was in and cover up all of these things, and it was very intense just to then get to the next step of taking my for real test of then going to a proctor center, which I then went to, and I was so nervous, but I was like, let's just go in here and let's see what happens. And I took it, and when I came out, I learned if I passed or failed. And it's in two parts. So it's the national portion and the state portion. And when I finished up the first portion, I thought it was going to say like, yeah, you passed or failed. Didn't say anything. It was like, okay, to the next. And I was like, oh no, I've got to wait till the end to find out anything. And when I came out, the proctor was like, oh, okay, well, let's pull up your results. I was like, we're going to do this right here, right now. Okay. And she pulled them up and said, congratulations, you passed, you passed both portions, blah, blah, blah. And I sat in her chair and I wept. I wept. Just was like, oh, thank God. Oh God. And she said to me, well, this isn't your first time taking it. And I said, yeah, it is. And she said, oh, that's crazy because the pass rate for first timers is 30%.
Wow.
It is. I mean, I feel like people just don't know. It is. It is a rabbit hole of information and legalese, and yeah, it is. It's thorough. So that was. I'm glad I
That's
learned that after.
what an accomplishment, Constance. That's really, really impressive. And I'm so proud of you for
Later.
making the jump and then, being part of that 30% figure.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me a little bit about identity
Yeah.
and how your identity shifted when you moved from full-time artist to uh, artist who also does something that's more entrepreneurial and business-y.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that is a great question. I will say one of the biggest pushes into me doing this was so many artists think that homeownership is totally out of the cards for them because we're so transient. We're used to like from thing to thing, and just sort of like holding our breath, hoping that we get cast or hoping that we get the next gig. And this idea of home and a sacred, safe place, this like consistent thing in an industry and in a career that is sort of turbulent. Is something that I hold very near and dear. And I've come across so many of my friends. This is really one of those bigger pushes too. And I'll get to that identity portion, but so many conversations in pockets that I was having with friends that were like, man, they'd come over to my home and be like, oh, I want like I long for something like this. I want this feeling too. And I was like, and you deserve it and you should have it. And they're like, nah, man, I can't. My if anyone was to look at my history of employment, it makes no sense. And I thought, no, the difference is that you just don't have a liaison. You don't have someone who's advocating for you in that space saying, no, 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 let me plug you with the right people. And so that has been a big sort of part of my stewardship is being that gateway, for so many artists, 1099ers, entrepreneurs to know, no, you can do this and you are worthy of doing it. And so as far as the identity crisis, I talked very, very heavily with Jack, my husband, about this because he's a musician and he works in the music business. And sometimes that can be really, it can feel a little like conflicting because it's like, okay, well, yeah, I'm in this world, but I'm doing this side of it. And it's less about my, playing the instrument or being on stage or the creative process. And this creative process looks very analytical. It's so different. And am I doing it anymore? Am I not doing it? And then especially when it's like having to explain that to people. Cause, folks, especially when they're used to you being of a certain brand or with a certain sort of logo on you, they're like, oh, well, that's not that. So now I don't know how to treat you. I don't know how to box you. And that was the hardest internal battle. I feel like I did a lot of self-projection of like, what's going to happen when I go to, to a show at the ASC where I've had the pleasure of making so many connections there and so many relationships, and people know me in that space is one thing, but then to introduce myself and that inner battle. And what happened was I went to the touring advisory board meeting for the city of Stanton. I was invited to it and I went and I was like, holy mackerel. Okay, here we are. And I thought, the people on the board would introduce themselves. That's fine. But then they were like, we're going to go around the room. And everybody else here, you introduce yourself and sort of tell us your affiliations. And I was like, excuse me, I was like, oh shit, oh no, oh no, oh no. No, what am I supposed to say? And as it was getting closer, the circle was getting closer to me, I was like, "Okay, just, like, let it," so full chest, Constance, and I said, I'm a "Hello, my name is Constance Swain, I'm a local artist, and I'm a realtor with Long& and Foster." And the next person went, and that felt, oh, the catharsis, right? That release of being like, "Yeah, yes, yes, it is both. It is not either or. It is not one more than the other. It's not sometimes I do." It's like, no, this is, and this is just a label because I'm so much more than that too, right? I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a daughter, I'm so many other things. But as far as that, like, what is your official title? It was nice to be able to say, yeah, and I full chest that. And for so many people who might be pivoting or expanding, that's probably one of the hardest hurdles is to like, how do you introduce yourself? And just, I don't know, I guess just feeling fully confident in that. And ever since I've definitely had my moments of slipping, but I would say the more that I've done it, the less it's become because in ways that I thought real estate and being in a sort of office setting would take away from the creativity, it has done the opposite. I have felt more creative these days than I felt in a while, which is trippy. Did not know that was gonna happen. But, what's the best thing you can tell someone who's a creative? Here's some clay. Now mold it into what you think it should be. And that's, when I realized, "Oh, this is what this is," I I'm getting to brand myself and I'm getting to say, okay, well, what are the things, even aesthetically, all the way down to like the color schemes of what I'm picking. This is my story and this is what I want to emulate. And that has been the most freeing, creative endeavor and I've been on in a while. So it's been really cool.
That's great. It made me think of you said, you introduced yourself as a realtor, and that felt so good.
Mhm.
And it just made me think of titles and titles of plays and how it's so important to pay attention to the titles that we're using. And like for the longest time, I resisted the urge to call myself a CEO. I only recently started putting that on my official email tag. And it was only when we created the holding company that that owns the other companies that operate, that I
So you're really
felt,
like pushed
okay,
into it.
I feel like it's finally time to call myself CEO. But before that, moving from, a full-time theater maker and actor into a owner operator, um, I resisted it for a while, and I instead decided to call myself a creator and collaborator. And that was what I
Which is
put
still
on, and
true.
still it's still true, and that is my on my personal email, that's my title still. Um, because exactly what you said of like, I need to be molding clay. I have to be taking something and and making it better somehow. Like the second somebody, gives me something that is like, oh, this just needs maintenance, like this just needs to continue in the same fashion over and over again. I just can't do it. It's just like not in me to do that. I've got to take something from 0 to 1. I'm
Yep.
really bad at taking something from 1 to 10.
Yep. Yeah, look, that's the beauty, right? That's the challenge and that's the fun part is that it's never done. And that's what artists love. We know that even in doing a play, and you're in the run of a show and to know it's still not done. Every audience is different, every experience is different. And on the flip side of that with real estate, right? Like every transaction is different, every client is different. So like there's no sort of like one size fits all, but establishing, yeah, like what is who y who are you at the foundation? And that will never change, like, that's consistent, right? And that's been the fun and interesting thing that I've been sort of molding and finding that it's not too different from any other pocket that I'm in, and do you find that too? Like with all of the many ventures that you've gone on, sort of like when you think about this idea of taking something from 0 to 1, right? Like it might be a different route or whatever, but as far as who you are at the start of it, does it feel like that is pretty consistent? Just how you approach like an idea and making it into taking it to that next level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, so I got into this rhythm in theater of you get cast,
Mhm.
you rehearse a play, you get the play to be a finished product, and then you run the play for a certain amount of time, then the play closes, right? And then you're off to the next project. Or, when you're in rep, as I know you have been, you're running one show and then you start rehearsing the next. And then that opens and then you start rehearsing the next. And then the season closes and the process starts again, right?
Mhm.
And I've found that the come to learn about myself is a better way to say it. I've come to learn about myself that that's really inherent to who I am as a creative person. Like even the idea of being on Broadway and running a successful show that runs for, 3 years and just but you're doing the same show every single night, every single week, every single year. I don't think I would be very good at that. I think I would
Mm.
get frustrated by the lack of change and the lack of uh of starting something new, putting something down and starting something new.
Mhm.
And that's sort of that 0 to 1 versus 1 to 10. And I think people who can go 1 to 10 have this ability to maintain their focus and making small improvements again and again and again and perfecting something, which I have a great admiration for. So it's not to say like that one is better than the other, or running a show for 3 years on Broadway isn't as good as, creating something again and again and again. They're just very different skill sets, I think, for very different artists.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. That's well said, and I like you said that, what you've come to discover about yourself. Yeah, I find that to be true too. What I've come to discover about myself is that, I am someone who does enjoy this sort of like you said, the person who likes the 1 to 10. Like I'm like, "Oh, okay, how can this evolve?" And I do enjoy the 0 to 1, but it's like if someone gives me a template, then I'm like, "Okay, cool. This is the playground. Got it." And I will start to press and push and, sort of like reshape in all kinds of ways as to how this thing can function or whatever. And so that looking at that, whether that's with a play or in this real estate world, it's like, okay, here's the template of how this thing goes. Even something as simple as like, oh, here's this contract, right? Like, and with all this legalese, one of my favorite things to do is to shape and refine how I put that into my own words, to make it so that it is layman terms and it feels very personal and transparent. And that's something that I'm excited to refine again and again and again to know that like 3 years from now, it's probably going to be something incredibly different that I say. And that's one of those like it's not exactly the same, but as far as like the parallels, that's yeah. I feel like I'm someone who really enjoys the length of a process. I get a little sad when I'm like, "Oh, it's over."
So tell me about your plan for how you're going to be both a realtor and a theater artist. What is the plan, or do you have a plan, or how do you see it unfolding in the next couple of years?
It's so funny that you ask because just not yesterday, but the day before, I went up to DC for a final callback of a world premiere that they're doing out there. Fingers crossed,
Nice.
we'll see if I get it. But, and that was terrifying because I was like, "Oh, shit." Because I, like on Sunday, I had a listing appointment where I was like I went down the rabbit hole of all, like, 80 ways this thing could shake out where I'm like, "Oh no, what happens if everything starts happening? What if like this seller says, "Yeah, I'm ready to go right now. Let's do it." And then this offer happens and like, "Oh snap, now you're in a show." Oh, oh God, which is a great thing to have things going, but what happens when those things overlap or conflict? And I'm someone who very much believes that I don't want to do anything halfway. I want to, if I say I'm really about integrity and about my word. If I say something, I really want to honor that. And it's not even so much about reputation, though that's important, but it's like just it's who I am. I want to make sure if I tell you I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. So that was why I was really getting tripped up. And so when that those thoughts were happening, I thought, okay, pull back. What you need to do is strategize. Let's say that something one, you can't strategize something that hasn't happened because you don't have all the information. But based on what you do know, how about you just start to have those conversations with the people that need to be, brought in? And so, for example, something like that, I had already spoken to a trusted, really good friend now who's become like this mentor to me in the real estate world, and she works in my office, and she is awesome. And I went to her and I said, "Hey, I have this opportunity. It's a callback and doesn't mean anything necessarily. Doesn't mean I'm going to get it, but." And I wasn't sure. I was like, "Should I go? Because I don't know." And she was like, "No, go. Whatever you do, do not ever turn that part of yourself off to do real estate full time, because I think what you'll find is that you'll be unhappy." And that was one of those like, I'm glad that someone who's experienced could tell me that, because she's a homesteader, and she had said one of the thing that's really driving her to push into real estate is because she's got this dream of having her own homestead. And so knowing that that's what it is, like that's truly the drive, that's her passion. She was like, "You can't, if there's an opportunity to do it, you do it. Real estate will always be here." And so I was like, "Okay, well, if that's the case, would you be interested in potentially partnering with me should any of this shake out where, I need a little help?" And she said, "Sure." And we had even talked about what that would look like, in terms of like the contract of that, and sort of like what that role would be and then what I could do. So I think when it comes to juggling all of these things, and juggling is such a negative connotation, but when it comes to honoring all of these facets of life, right? Strategy is going to be key. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. And some stuff you can't necessarily get ahead of, but as best I can, I want to be as transparent so that everyone involved knows what's going on. And Clarence Avant once said, "I don't have problems, I have friends." And that's something that I have to remind myself. And that's like one of my favorite quotes. I don't have problems, I have friends. And I think if all of us sort of pause and stop and go, yeah, is there someone that I know that I can lean on or talk to? Or, um, chances are that problem doesn't seem as big anymore? So that's my strategy. Yeah.
Yeah, just follow the opportunities as they come and trust that things are going to fall into place when they need to. And well, like you said, you've got community to lean into. And I do think you're right that we often let fear keep us from pursuing those things because we all of this anxiousness builds up in us, and instead of teasing that out to its conclusion, I do this thing where I will play out the worst case scenario, and it's almost never as bad if you actually take it there, right? You have to take it to where, to what your fear is.
Hmm.
But when you finally get there, you realize, oh, it actually would be okay even if the worst case scenario happened. Like
Yeah.
we could figure it out. And a lot of the times that comes back to the people that you have in your life who are there and willing to help you.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, and strategizing. I mean, the strategy is just key. Just having some sort of game plan and knowing that the game plan is going to change. And it's okay that it does, but just getting it written down, talking to people who to glean some wisdom on how to best navigate, leaning on people who can step in. And yeah, it's this past week has proven to me that it is all possible. This sort of like big question that I had in my head of, well, if I really get into this, is all, is directing, acting, all the sort of, is all that gonna sort of go away? And it hasn't. It hasn't, it's March 5th, and I've already been to, Boston and AD'd a second AD'd a film out there. I've already done an audiobook with Penguin Random House, and now this callback, it's like, okay, I really believe that the universe does conspire, and if you put that out there and you manifest and you just stay the course, and it'll all shake out. So we shall see.
Yeah, it made me think of the trusting the path that you're on and believing that wherever you go, that's where you're supposed to be. And then recognizing that things often work out way down the road in a way
Mhm,
that you could never have imagined. And yet,
mhm.
hindsight is 2020, and you realize these things needed to unfold in this way in order for this to happen.
Yes.
And when you approach your past with a sense of gratitude, regardless of how things went, or your feeling of how they went, but if you look back with gratitude in your heart, then you're able to trust that where you are is where you're supposed to be. And that was a turning point for me. I'm interested to hear if this happened for you as well. In my previous life as a full-time actor, out of, getting my terminal degree MFA from the same program you got yours, University of Houston, a big turning point for me was when I stopped needing to get the next job, and I just started trusting that the right thing would come, and that auditions shifted from being like, please give me something because I need something, to let's figure out if this is a good fit for you
Yes.
and for me. And if it's
Yes.
not, that's okay.
Isn't that such a it's like when that light bulb goes off, you go, "I could have been doing it like this the whole while." But I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I had that, sort of like out on a greener, it was a different phase, a different chapter of life. So, that's how we were coming at everything. Like you said, auditions, please, please, please hire me, please see me, please. And how that has now shifted to, oh, is this a good fit? And as much as you're interviewing me, I'm interviewing you. Do I want to do am I gelling with this? When everything doesn't feel like it's sort of hanging on that yes, it frees up. And I oddly enough, with this callback that I had, that was probably the it was awesome. It was such like a just a personal win, sort of turning of a page for me as an artist, because, having directed too, there's a being on that other side of the table in an audition room, right? That totally changes the way that I even think of auditions anymore. Because before it's like, oh God, I just want them to see me and be pleased and impressed. And now being on the other side, it's like, I want to see you, and I hope that you're solving my problem. I hope that you're going to be the one I cast. Otherwise, I wouldn't have called you back. I want to see. And it's less about it being a perfect audition and more about, like, do we just vibe, man? Like, what? Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna throw some stuff at you. Like, what do you think? What are you gonna do with that? I want to see how playful you are, and having that intel was so helpful in going to this audition. Whereas I feel like maybe just even a couple years back, it would have been a totally different Constance, because I got in the car and left Stanton, drove to DC, and it was the worst weather. It was, of course, gloomy and rainy, and every truck was wanting to go 90 miles an hour. And I was like, my God. And I basically walked in. I planned to be there an hour early. I got there with 15 minutes to spare, and I was the first one for the audition. And so back in the day, that would have been, me just trying to calm my nerves. And it just felt so good to be like, hey, Mm. Go in there, have a good time. If you mess up, which I did, I sure did. I got well into that first monologue and, like, was like, "Oh, I totally skipped." I was like, "You know what? Imma take that back," and not apologize for it, because we're human, because it happens. And I don't care no one wants to see me beat myself up. We've all had a brain fart moment and had to go, "You know what? Let me start that over again." But it's on us to give ourselves that permission, and that was really such a, like, very recent, a couple of days turning point for me to to get in that car and go, "You know, whether I get it or not, that's not even what it's about." And, what a beautiful realization to go, it's do I want it? Sure, but it's not even what it's about. It's about what it's taught me, that I'm showing up differently to this because I'm not coming at it from the angle that I used to of, "Please hire me, please see me." It is, "Hey, who are you? Do I wanna be in this space? Tell me more about this story." You know? And is this a fit for both parties? Because it's no longer just all my eggs are in the basket of being hired for this show. I've had the great, realization and evidence to know that my skills are transferable, my passions are transferable, and that's been proof to know that, "Oh, okay, all these things are going on, so that's cool."
Yeah. Yeah. And, it made me think when you were talking about the director, casting director, whoever it is that you're auditioning for, there's always more information than you have, right? There's always more information that they're working with than you're aware of. And so it's completely unhelpful to think that you understand what's going on. And like that, I think that's what I'm trying to say is 99% of the time, it's not a good fit, which has nothing to do with you.
Yep,
It's
there's so many
because
other
they're
factors to
looking
play.
there's so many other things going on that you're not aware of. And like I think about this with hospitality
Mm,
in our operating companies a lot, right? And I will tell our team always make the most generous assumption possible because you never know if that person is coming into the business having had the worst day ever. And we had there was a story where someone came in and walked out on a check. They didn't pay for their bill. And you know team members were saying that they were you know jerks. And it's like, you know what, let's make the most generous assumption. Maybe they literally just forgot. Maybe they had a great meal, they forgot, they walked away. Maybe they'll come back. And sure enough, they did actually forget. And as they were passing by, remembered and came in and paid. And, the thing is that even if your generous assumption is wrong, your day, your person, your soul is still uplifted by deciding to make that choice that
yes.
I'm going to assume this person is doing their best just like I'm doing my best.
That is beautiful to I love that, and what a beautiful, like, testament to humanity at its best, you know, because that's I believe that no one is seeking out to do, not usually, I would say, to do harm or to be deceitful like that. I mean, sure, does that happen? Of course, like, unfortunately, that does happen in the world, obviously, but most times people just forgot or they're having a bad day. You've caught them all, you've caught them at a low, and to extend that grace, because Lord knows, as my grandmother says, if you ain't had your day, keep on living. And you will be that person. And may that grace be extended to you, when you need understanding because something has gone awry, or, and it reminds me of, what is that book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People? And there's a portion where he talks about being on a train and in New York, and it was a busy whatever, and like the father gets on with his two children, and the kids are going buck wild, and dad sits next to him, and he is just out of it. And everyone's kind of like being disturbed by these kids who are running around, being loud and whatever. And then he looks to the man and says, "Hey, would you mind, saying something or getting your kids because they're disturbing people?" And the guy just kinda, like, taps back and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry, we're just leaving the hospital. Their mom just died, and they don't know what to do." I think that they're and so it lending, sort of to what you just said, you just don't know what people are carrying, and there's so much going on in the world, and people just showing up as best they can, and so to to extend that grace, yeah, yeah, that it made me think of that, but because that really resonated with me, if you just don't know where you're meeting people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you just never know. And then, so as you approach all of these situations where you're trying to negotiate with other people, auditions, um, in real estate, with anybody you transact with in our businesses, anytime we partner, uh, remembering that you don't have perfect information
Uh,
is so important
yeah.
because we all it's like we go through life thinking people know what's going on inside of our heads, or at least that's how it feels to me. I had
Sometimes,
to make
yeah.
a very conscious shift to be like, right, they don't know what I'm thinking because I haven't communicated it. And so the problem lies in me. I need to figure out, how do I communicate better? How do I speak more clearly? How do I remember that I'm not working with perfect information and I need to often shut up and ask questions, right? And then tune in and listen
Right.
uh, in a deeper way, um, and then trust the process. And when when I don't get cast, most generous assumption is, that was never my role. I was never supposed to be at that theater because
Mhm.
there's something else that's coming down the line.
Yes, and what did you learn from that experience? What was the takeaway? Like, yeah, you didn't get the role, but what, like, was it did you feel really good about that audition? Did you just despite all of the many factors that were, you were in traffic or whatever, it's like, yeah, but I still showed up, and that felt good to show. It felt good to be called back, and for me, it was like just dusting them cobwebs off. I was like, oh Lord, time my audition, they were like, "Can you bring your printed headshot and resume?" I was like, "Oh god, I don't have that. I gotta go do that." And that, yeah, so just the like you said, it was never meant for me, but what was meant for me was what I took away, and that, yeah. And it's so funny because this past Sunday when I had this listing appointment, had prepped and was so excited, it went so well. I was essentially doing a walkthrough of this couple's home, and it's a beautiful home, well maintained. I was really excited, and we were just hitting it off. I feel like if it was a casual setting, they would have been like, "Hey, you want a drink? Like, can we get you a cocktail?" Because we were just hitting it off, and it was like the last probably 5 or so minutes where it was like, "Okay, well, we've talked through all the things we need to talk through, and if you guys are feeling good, we can make this thing official." And, I brought out the paperwork, and it was like their entire body shifted. I was like, "Oh, snap." They were like, recoiled, and, they started looking at each other. And the thing that I appreciate so much about what it is that we do, and what we are attuned to as artists, is that we are so empathetic. We are so empathetic, and we pick up on nuances, right? And people don't even have to say anything. It's a lot of times it's just like, did it feel like the air shifted? And just our awareness, right? And so I caught that pretty instantly. And then they began to share, well, we really like you. We're not really sure what our timeline is, which, that's totally fine. But then they started to share how they had a really, really bad experience with an agent before, and how they felt like, they had done all this work that this person was supposed to do, and they didn't do it, and they were dropping the ball left and right. But because, they're trying to get to closing and get to that house, they're gonna, okay, well, we'll pick it up. We'll do, and they still have to pay that person, their commission. And it just sort of felt like they were, slighted. They got the short end of the stick, so it totally makes sense why they would recoil. And I had to, this is the part that nobody ever talks about, right? Like, there was no amount of education that I've done or conversations that I've had thus far where anyone says, like, so here's what happens when you come across, clients or customers who have had a negative experience. No one has ever talked about that, but here it was happening, in real time in front of me. But I was grateful for all of the things that life has taught me, slash the things that I've really been able to tap into as an artist, in that listening, and to know that the best thing that I could have done in that moment, and someone may say, no, I would have done XYZ, that's fine. But the best thing that I could do in that moment was close the book, push it to the side, and say, hey, one, I heard you. And two, you're freaking valid. You're so valid in how you feel. And also, you know what? The same thing happened to me. So I totally understand why your natural reaction would be, we need to step away and think about this. And you know what? You should. This is not a decision you should make by feeling pressured or coerced or, sweet talked into. No, that I would not feel good about that. I want you to feel confident in what this is. And you know what? I'm going to continue to be consistent, but the ball is in your court, but I'm here. And to I think for some people that might have felt like a loss, but it wasn't, because so much of what we do in our work as artists, whether it's like with fellow actors or directors or cast, whoever we may come across, patrons, whatever, it's such a that return on investment, and I say this with like not coming at it transactionally, but that return on investment of when you truly invest in people is cannot be beat and you can't cheat it, right? Like if you mean right by people, then lead with that. And it might be it might be weeks, months, years from now, but they will find their way back to you because that really is how it works. I feel, like you said earlier, that audition that you go on, you might not book, it might not have been for you, but that relationship, that opportunity to be in a space with people and invest in them. Yeah, you're invested in the material, but investing in the people by saying, "Hey, how are you?" As a person, a human, I'm seeing you first. I'm not coming to you because you're the casting director and you might give me this job. I'm coming to you to say, hi, it's nice to meet you, whatever. And people remember that. They might not always remember what you said to them, but they remember always how you made them feel. And so that was what I thought a lot about with this couple is that when all is said and done, because I could have said all the right stuff and they could have been like, okay, you know what, we'll sign. But what likely would have happened? They would have gone to bed, they would have talked about, or, they would have sat late and they would have talked about it and they would have been like, you know what, we signed, but I wasn't really feeling good. And then all of a sudden that trust that we were starting to build is fractured, but yeah, I know that was a bit of a rabbit hole, but that resonated with me a lot.
No, it's so good. And it's, you know, I read a lot of books on business,
You
and
do.
one of the things that one of the things that comes up is, you know, the whole point of business is to make a profit, right? So if it's not a charity or nonprofit, then you're not doing this as a hobby. You're out there to make money. But but all business books that I've read, a consistent theme seems to be, but it's not about that. Like, yeah, that has to happen, right? Of course, that needs to happen in order for the business to be healthy. But it's always about something else. And it's like what you just touched on, right? It's like you could have gotten to the point that you wanted to for for the commission to be more possible, right? Sign on the dotted line. But for you, it's not about that. It's about something else, and the commission happens, but it's because you are really there to serve people and take care of people. And if you don't do that, then you're not being true to who you are. And you know, having gone through the house buying and selling process a couple of times now, this is the second house that I've owned, and I have had both great experience and not so great experience with a realtor. And I learned about why you need a realtor in the first place, and I want to hear if my understanding is correct from someone who knows a lot more about it than I do. But so when you do these transactions, you need a party who is neutral. And that's where the realtors come in because, you know, they each get to know either side of the transaction, the parties on either side, and then they're able to approach it with less of that personal and emotional um, response, right? Does does that sound accurate, or what would you tweak about that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely, having a realtor, and here's the thing that a lot of folks don't know is that a realtor and a real estate agent, it's not they are used interchangeably. All
Mhm.
realtors are real estate agents, but not all real estate agents are realtors. So, to be a realtor, you have to be a member of, the National Association of Realtors. And then that goes all the way, it trickles all the way down to VAR, Virginia, which is what I'm a part of, and then GAR, the Greater Augusta Association of Realtors, so even more local. And what it means is that we adhere to one, we have more training, and we adhere to a higher standard of ethics. So that's something that folks might not know. But yeah, as far as having a realtor, it's someone who is going to be your advocate, someone who is going to absolutely look out for, or should be looking out for your best interest. They get to know you, whether that's on the buying side or the selling side, or sometimes it is both. And there are different like forms of relationships. You have realtors who are like a in single agency where it's like I am only representing the buyer or the seller in this transaction. And then you have designated agency, which means that I'm still only representing my person, whichever side that is, but the other agent or realtor on the other side is also affiliated with my branch or my brokerage. So it could be like another agent with Long and Foster who's on the selling side. So that's designated agency, which still means that you should be represented fully. But then they've got dual agency, which I know folks do. It is legal in Virginia, but it is not something that I I don't necessarily condone it because it means you're representing both sides. You're Switzerland. But how can you be
Mhm.
Switzerland and be looking out for, everybody involved? Because that means that basically everything goes away uh when you're that person. And it's not something that I ever want to be involved in. But
I guess that would only work in like a very simple transaction, right?
yeah, like, maybe if it's, oh, that both parties know each other, like, maybe in one of those situations, like, oh, it could be something like that, but it does happen, where it's like, oh, if I have this listing and I'm the seller's agent, and then a buyer comes in and they're unrepresented, and I have gotten my, sellers to already agree previously, and it has to be in writing, agree, like, "Oh, yeah, we are fine with dual agency." And if this buyer agrees that they're also fine with dual agency and my broker signs off on it, well then we could find ourselves in that situation. But I just think that it's a sure way to get a lawsuit because who are you advocating for? Who are you truly representing? And so yeah, a realtor should be the one who is going to bat, making sure that you're going to get the best possible outcome. And a lot of times they are wearing many hats where they are like, doing the business side or whatever, and they're doing all the paperwork, blah blah blah. But then sometimes people, when they're having these with the buy and sell process, there are a number of reasons why people are buying and selling. And like you said, it could be, oh man, we're expanding, so we want our family to have more space. So we got a promotion or whatever. And sometimes it's my parents have passed and now I have to sell their home. So that people are at different stages. And one of my realtor friends, she had a buyer who was moving here and his wife was terminally ill. And so that was her wish, was that to know that her husband was going to be in his forever home before she was no longer with us. And so I don't I think that realtors are also supposed to be these empathetic advocates who are going to be looking out as well. And yeah, and then of course like all of the other stuff, the access that they have and blah 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 to the MLS, all that other things. But as far as the personal relationship, and that's why it's so important. That's why I did not push that couple, because I want them to know that I am not in it for the commission. I'm in this for one, for them, and then secondly, hopefully I'm someone that they're going to tell their friends and family about. Hey, oh yeah, because what happens when you know and trust someone, you go, oh yeah, you're looking for, let me connect you. It's the same thing of what you guys are doing with Green Room and Remedy Burger. People could just come in there and get their stuff and have their meal and whatever and go. But what you're trying to create is this feeling of it's beyond just you're the customer. You're truly you're being served, and you're getting an experience, and you truly are seen in this space. And so what happens when that happens? They're going to tell people, they're going to come back, they're going to bring people when they come. And that's what you hope for. But I think a lot of businesses, just like a lot of agents, are out for that commission, and the difference really does show.
Yeah. Yeah, I have taken the strategy of when we get a negative review on online somewhere,
Mhm.
a lot of people will just they just don't respond to anything good or bad. And my tactic has been the opposite. I respond to everything with exuberant thanks and but then when it's a negative, which is really hard on me, it's something like um getting a bad review in a play, you know, somebody saying like what you did was not good, and I take it really hard, but I try to take it with a ton of humility, and I try to get in touch with that person because what I want to express to them is like we missed the mark somewhere because we're not if you felt like you didn't get a good deal or you felt like you didn't get a good experience, then we're miscommunicating because that's not what we're trying to do here.
Right.
So I want to make it right. I want to figure out what we did wrong. I want to figure out did you misunderstand what, you know, what was happening here, and if so, I want to find a way to make it right, whether that's giving them a, you know, a coupon saying come try us again, or refunding their meal and being like, "Oh, I think we just, you know, you wanted you wanted burgers with thick patties. You didn't want smash burgers, and I understand that confusion, so don't, you know, don't worry about it. This one's on us." Um, and I mean, that gets us back to that, you know, that service and wanting to create an experience and wanting to be there for people, and that being the end goal of the whole purpose of why we're doing any of this, right?
Yeah.
Um, so tell me this, Constance, as someone who lived that transient life of you go where the work is, and then someone who went through the process of buying their first house and getting married and settling in, and now through this new endeavor of being a real estate agent, a realtor, how do you define the word home, and how has that definition changed for you over the years?
Ooh, what a good question. Ooh. I have to say my slogan, my realtor slogan, because that's really what it stems from. It's where stories meet spaces. And what that it's what it all means is that everyone has a story, you know, wherever that might find you in your chapter, and that space ought to really hone in and uplift and emphasize whatever that is, and be that, you know, that sort of safety net, that consistency. And so home is this it is a feeling that everyone deserves. Everybody deserves, and unfortunately, so many of us have been made to feel like, for whatever reason, it is beyond reach, and it doesn't it is beyond home ownership, though I do think that is important, you know, if that's it's a journey that someone wants to go down, because it's not necessarily for everyone, but for those who it is for, yeah, it's this sense of home, because the world is crazy, and you can't control it, you can't do anything about it. Everyone deserves to feel home, and that their story deserves to be honored in such a way, and whatever space feels like it really does align and fit with that, then yeah, and that whether it's whether it's we're talking about your personal home or the home of your business, right? Like that this idea of stories be needing spaces and spaces needing stories is sort of across the board.
And if I add one more word in there, what does that do? In that, what does artistic home mean to you?
Ooh, man. What does artistic home mean? Artistic home is all about authenticity. It's all about authenticity, because I am someone who believes that you are an artist no matter where you can't help that, no matter where you are. The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, excellent book. He talks a lot about a lot people might not see themselves as artists because they, you know, don't have a traditional artist job or whatever, but we're all artists. When you think about a creative way to maneuver around traffic, that is a, you know, it really, we as human beings, as living, breathing beings, we can't help but be artists. So this idea of artistic home is whatever is authentic to you at any given moment. You're an artist in your
Mm,
relationships, in your business, in when you're working out. It does not matter. It is always in you, always with you. So
I
that's
love that. Like, so when you're true to yourself, that's an artistic home. That's you being in your artistic home.
always, can't help it. You can't fake the funk. You can try, but you can't fake it.
Constance, thank you so much for joining me for this hour of Ghostlight. It's always my sincere pleasure to have a conversation with you.
Well, anytime. Back at you. This was wonderful. And I hope this resonates with people listening, because this is great. Keep doing this. This is so good.
All right. Well, only if you will come on again sometime.
Duh. Next week, no, anytime. Anytime you need me, I'm here.
All right, girl. Thank you. I will see you soon.